Fantastic, that's recording now, thank you. Okay, so as I said before, welcome back to today's session. Thank you for coming for this second seminar where we're looking about how we search for evidence, and we're going to be talking about how we might build a search strategy to find our evidence. So last session we talked about, now I'm on screen. So last session we covered how to break down an area of research interest and how to refine an area of research interest into a focused question. And we talked about the different types of research and how they all kind of feed into what we would call a systematic literature review. And we covered the different ways, the different stages for identifying and developing your research question. Today, we're going to look at, so we can understand where we look for evidence, and we're going to look at being able to build a search strategy. So we're going to divide this into 4 parts. And the first thing we're going to identify where we look for evidence, how we navigate databases, how we build a strategy on subscribed databases, and how we build a strategy on open databases. So firstly, what is a search strategy? It's just a specific combination of keywords purposefully developed to retrieve relevant information from a database. So if you think about the last thing you Googled, even though it might have just been quite a simple phrase, that's a very simple search strategy that you're implementing to try and find information. So for example, when I was writing this presentation, the last thing I'd Googled was something along the lines of Fitbit versus 4 swimming, because I was trying to go swimming with my Fitbit for the first time and I wanted to know if it was waterproof. It's a very basic search strategy, but it was effective. It got me the information I needed, and I realised that it is waterproof and I can go swimming. So firstly, where do we look for evidence? Last session, last month, we talked about these different types of evidence we might look for. And lost my mouse again. Very confusing having all these different screens around me. There we are. So we've talked about where we might, the different types of evidence we might include in a literature review. And the types of data you include will vary depending on your review question. And then that will also change how you search and how you find your evidence. If you're looking at academic journals and academic journal articles, then normally they have subscription costs. And so what you can access will depend on the institution you're affiliated with and what they pay for. There are some free databases you can use if your institution isn't affiliated with any or isn't subscribing to any databases. And the people who are watching this online or looking at the PDF online, these will be click-through links that you can use to go straight through to those databases. Even if you use these that are on the screen at the minute, you might find that some of the articles you come across are still behind the paywall and you still can't access them due to various reasons. And what you can do then is there's this lovely website which is like Facebook for academics called ResearchGate, and it's completely free to join. Anyone who's interested in research can join. And if there's an article that you want to read but you can't get access to, it's always worth searching on there to see if the author's on there. And sometimes they'll be able to upload a free version of the article for you to read. And if it's not there, but it's listed as the author is on the platform and they've registered that article as theirs, there's this handy little button you can press which is request full text, and they will normally just send you an email with it in there. The majority of people who write academic articles are people just like me or like Amy or anyone else, people just like you. And if someone emailed me saying, can I have a copy of an article you've written, I'd be absolutely thrilled. So go ahead and ask all you like. There's also some Chrome plugins or Chrome extensions you can use to find free versions of academic articles. Again, these will be click-through links, but I must admit I've not used these before, so I can't advise on how you use them. For subscribed databases, there is lots and lots and lots and lots of different subscribed databases you can use. And again, these will be accessed through your institution because they will pay for them. The databases are all independent collections of journals, books, and different academic literature, loosely grouped into disciplines or topics. So, for example, something like Greenfile will include information on the human impact on the environment, whereas European journals, European Views of the Americas 1493 to 1750 will only have articles and topics relating to that specific time period. This means that when you're deciding where to search for evidence, you need to have a look at what academic databases you have access to that might have information relevant to your chosen topic. For us, we chose CINAHL, Medline, PsycInfo, and SOC Index, which always just makes me think of socks. We chose these mainly because these were relevant to our topic. So CINAHL normally has literature around nursing and allied health. Medline covers things like biomedical science, life sciences, behavioural sciences, it's chemical sciences, bioengineering is a lot more medicalised. PsycInfo often has things like behavioural sciences, social sciences, covers things like social work, medicine, linguistics. And SOC Index is mainly sociology, and it covers things like social work, criminal justice, social psychology, things like that. We also included some open access databases in our searches. So we have the Cochrane Library and Web of Science. And this is just to get a sort of a broader variety of information included in our search. If you're looking for things like policies and reports, you normally, for policy documents, you'll be looking for policies of specific companies. So you would be going to that specific company's website and searching on their website. So, for example, if you were doing a piece of research about what higher education says about admitting students, then you might go to the university's website and look for their admissions policy. Very similar for if you're looking at government policies, they're all normally listed on the government websites, and you can refine those down to whether you're looking for guidance, regulation, policies, and things like that. So, this is the fun bit where it starts to get really, really fun. It's about navigating databases. And firstly, I think it's quite important to understand what a database is and how they work. So if we're thinking about a database, what we mean is just an organized collection of information which is structured for easy access and regular updates. All databases work in roughly the same way, although the specific way they label things will vary. I like to think of it as a digital library. So this is my digital library, and it's got some lovely trees around it. And this is a library of health and social care. It has lots of information related to health and social care, and all day, every day, librarians are going out and checking places they know that produce information around health and social care, and they bring it back to the library. And if you've been in the library, you know that it's not just piles dotted around everywhere. Everything's organised under topics, headings, subjects, grouped together so it's easy to find. So when the librarians are bringing back that new information, they'll categorise it under a topic so that everyone knows where to find it. With our database, it's the same thing. It's our digital library. It has these algorithms, which I'll call digital librarians, which will automatically pull the internet for new information or publications or updates. And again, like our librarians, it will only search the places it knows will produce information that are relevant to the sort of things it wants to categorise. Once our digital librarians or algorithms identify a new publication, the database then has to categorise that information so it knows where to organise it, and people know where to look within that database to be able to find it. So you can see here some examples. This particular article by Sewell et al. Has been linked to 4 different subjects and 4 different topics that you could find that article underneath. And these are just the same as those headings and signs you find in a library to help you find your way around. The problem is that different databases like to call those signs different things. And this is where we start to get it gets a bit complicated. So CINAHL and Medline like to call them mesh terms, and they're medical subject headings. APA PsycInfo has the very catchy thesaurus of psychological index terms. and SOC Index calls them subject terms. So when you're building a search strategy, you probably want a mixture of these pre-agreed topic headings and subject headings or mesh terms or whatever the database you're using is calling them, and a mix of free text. And this is where we come to our Boolean searching. So this might be familiar to some of you. Our Boolean operators are mainly these three words called and, or, and not. And when you're using your free text, you can use your Boolean operators to structure your search. This is just a quick practice, silly overview before we start putting it into practice. So if we go back to my example of when I was looking at whether or not my Fitbit was waterproof, if I'd have been searching on something a bit more sophisticated or a slightly more sophisticated database, I might have used Boolean operators to structure this. I might have started with a model of Fitbit, and then I use and because I know that I'm going to add more search terms. And then I'd think, well, I want to know if it's, if I can swim with it, but I also want to know if it's waterproof. So I'm going to put swimming or waterproof because I want to know both things and they're both relevant pieces of information. I'm going to put them in brackets so that the database I'm using knows that I only mean that or those two terms and not or for the wider search itself. Finally, I know there's lots of other models of Fitbit, but I don't want to know, or it's not relevant to me to know if a charge 2 is waterproof because that doesn't help me decide whether or not I can go swimming with mine. So in the end, at the end of the search, I'll put not charge 2. Normally, this is the least used of Boolean phrases because if I search this, then this will exclude all results that have the word or the phrase charge 2 in them. I know that a lot of websites that give information about Fitbits will have information about all of the different Fitbits all on the same page. So using this search, they would be excluded because they would also contain a reference to charge 2. So this is just an example for the moment. What we're actually doing here is we're asking it to run 2 different searches at the same time. We want it to search Fitbit Versafore, swimming and charge 2, and at the same time, we want it to search Fitbit waterproof and not charge 2. It might seem a bit lazy when it's just 2 searches, but this becomes very useful later on. There's also ways that punctuation can help structure your search. So if we take our first search term, we've actually got 4 words in there, 3 words in there, sorry. I looked at the number 4 and read that out loud instead of... Excuse me, did that make anyone else jump? Back to wherever I was. Right, so we can see that there's 3 words there. If we search just those 3 words as a phrase, then what the algorithms will do is they will search for those 3 words in any order, all in the same result. If we want them to have results that have those 3 words in that order, then we need to put these in quotation marks. So any phrases that you want to come back in that order, you need to surround with quotation marks. And we can always also use the asterisk symbol to help with our search. And this is about ensuring that variations of a word are included in the search. So at the moment, this search is only going to show results that have both the first term, which is the Fitbit Versafore, and either of the second terms, swimming or waterproof. However, if I was very silly, I might have phrased it differently. I might have phrased the word swimming differently. I might have been asking if a Fitbit Versafore was swimmable, or if it was, what is the waterproofness of a Fitbit Versafore? There could be results that have those unusual but different words in them that still have relevant information. So if we want to be thorough in our search, we need to make sure we're including all of these words. So what we do is we truncate the word, which we make it a bit shorter, and add an asterisk on the end. What this does is it tells the algorithm that we want results that have any words beginning with those 4 letters. So this will include searches for things like, it will say swim, swimming, swimmable, swimmiest. If I don't even think that's a word, I'm making up words here. Swims, and same with waterproof. It will include searches for all of those variations of the word, as long as they begin with the letters that were already there before the asterisk. And again, this might look a bit silly, but it does become really, really useful. So next, we're going to talk about actually building the strategy. When we left last month, we talked about what the project that I'm working on, what we'd decided as our research question and how we'd defined our key terms within that question. And what we do now when we're starting to build our search strategy is we want to sort of label those key terms and key concepts within our search. So we had our social workers, we had our themes and our older adults. So what we're going to do is label those. Our question gives us our question tells us that we want results that have social workers in them. And if we're asking for information about where a social worker and at least one other discipline are working together, if we don't include social workers, then those results aren't going to be relevant. It also gives us something else we're looking for in our results, which is collaborative teams. Again, if we're looking at that collaboration between the social worker and someone else, we don't have that in our results, so they're not going to be particularly useful. We also wanted information about services that support individuals, and this can be a bit of a complex concept to turn into research, so we're just going to park that under collaborative teams for the moment. And we also said we wanted it to be relevant to older adults, so we know that one of our key concepts has to be older adults. So what we've done is name our key concepts. Next, what we're going to do is work out the different phrases and words that might be used to refer to these concepts in different databases. And this is just an example of how I like to organise things. So I like to get prepared by having an Excel spreadsheet. This is just to keep track of what I'm searching and what concept it relates to. It's mainly helpful when you're reporting your search strategy for replication, which is a requirement for your review to be considered systematic. But I find it also helps to just organise my brain and think of terms I might have missed. It's helpful to have a list to review in front of you and to play around with. The numbers on the left are what I'm going to label each search term, which you'll see why shortly. And I also like to colour code my search terms and my concepts, and this is just me trying to make things neat and look nice. So when we're looking at different words, phrases that we can include for our concepts, there's certain things we need to consider. We need to think about alternative spellings. Are there any different spellings of your keywords that we need to include all variations of? Is your term location specific? This is a terrible example, but it lives in my head rent-free. In Reading, a woodlouse is called a cheese log. I didn't know that until recently, and I think that's an incredible piece of information. And in the US, they're called pillbugs. So there's lots of regional terms for specific things that you may or may not be searching for in your results. Is there any synonyms or similar words that mean similar things that people might use to refer to your key concepts? And are there lots of versions or iterations of the word? And if yes, where would be best to truncate it and put that little asterisk so you know that you're including lots of information? So we're going to start our example of expanding a concept with our concept of older adults. What we need to do now is think about the words that other people might use to talk about these concepts and what they might look like as search terms. So for this, you can either play around on databases or by searching older adult and just having a browse, or you can think it through, and I'd always recommend a little bit of both. So our first search term I'd think about would be older adult. It needs to go in quotation marks because it's 2 words, and I've also put an asterisk on the end so that we can include the plural of the words at older adults as well as the singular adult. We could also have geriatric, which again, I would include with an asterisk to include variations of the word. But this becomes a little bit annoying as it would always also include things like geriatrician and the things that may not be necessarily relevant. But as we're just building and we're just starting, I wouldn't worry about that too much for now. We keep going like this, and we're looking for all the other ways or that other people might refer to this specific concept. I put these over into my spreadsheet and it's starting to look like a search string now. I've got these terms for older adults, which is great. And you can see that I've got them with their quotation marks and their asterisks and all correctly formatted. But these are just my free text terms. So what will help me even more is including specific subject terms that databases use. And I'm very sorry to say that if you're using a variety of databases, you do have to build a search strategy for each database. So I'm going to show you how to do this on Medline, which is one of the databases we used in our review. I'm using the University Discovery System, which is a bit like Google, just for searching specific academic databases. If you're affiliated with a university or an institution that subscribes to databases, you'll have a system slightly like this. If you're not, don't worry, we'll cover that in a moment. You can see I've got it to search Medline. And I've clicked on this button up here, which says Mesh 24. And this is Medline's most recent up-to-date list of their medical subject headings. And that's, again, what they call their labels they give to different topics. Clicking that button has brought me to this search bar where I can type in my generic concept idea. And Medline will tell me what mesh terms it thinks might be related. I get this list of terms, and there's quite a few of them, not all of them relevant. And some of them, I don't really know what they mean. Luckily, Medline has this little speech box on the end. And if you click on that, it will give you how a definition of what Medline thinks this term means and how they define that term. So this tells me that the mesh term aged is useful for my search because it does actually fit the population I'm interested in. And it also tells me that there's another mesh term that might be useful for my search. When I click the check boxes on the left, you'll see that the database starts building a search for me. You can see it's got some Boolean operators underneath it, and it asks which one you want to use to combine your search. So this is where we can really see the difference between and or as Boolean operators. Excuse me. So if I combine the searches, the key terms that were just there a second ago, we can really see the difference here. Here is our and search. You might notice that each of the terms have got MH in front of them. This is another code like the asterisks that are specific to the databases. And it tells Medline that it's a mesh term. And when you get really familiar with these databases, as Amy is, it's a bit like reading the Matrix, you sort of see through it all. So you can see on our search that we have, 498 results. So that means that there are 498 hits in this database that have all of these mesh terms. That hits, it's been tagged as talking about aged and talking about health services for the aged and talking about aged 80 plus. This can be useful, but at the minute we're just building a concept. So what we want to do is expand that even more and make it a bit broader. And this is our all search, and you can see we've got considerably more hits. I think it's 3.48 million. There's 3.48 million hits that Medline has labelled with one or more of these terms. And that might seem like a really scary number. It will get worse before it gets better. But at this stage, the big numbers are really good, and we'll start refining them as we go. So what I do is I put each of those mesh terms over into my spreadsheet. This is a bit repetitive of me, and again, it's just my preferred way of working. You don't have to do this. It's just to keep track of things for myself. But now I'm going to make better use of the search engine the university uses, specifically this little button here called search history. I'll go through each of my individual search terms, copy and paste them in the correct format from my spreadsheet onto the search engine. And then I'll click the search history, and you can see that I've got a lovely list of all of my search terms along with the number of results. And you'll see it's also given me some options about how I might want to combine these terms. So remember, what we're doing is building a search of a specific concept. We don't want results that have all of these terms because that would be too narrow and too small, and there probably wouldn't be many. We want results that might have one or more of these terms. I check all the boxes and I click search with OR. And what you can see is that I've got now is a search that encompasses one of the main concepts in my research question. We might have 3.7 million results, but I'm not too worried about that for the moment. This is a search strategy just for the one concept, and I'm going to copy and paste that search string over onto my Excel document. And you can see that I've also populated the box on the right where I put older adult in blue, and it tells me that search number 10 is the all-encompassing search for that concept. And I've color coded them to because that just looks neat and makes me happy inside. You repeat this process for each of your concepts, combining them with OR into all-encompassing concept searches that aims to find as many results as possible in a database that are relevant to that concept. Our next stage is to combine these overall searches with and you can see here that the final number of searches is much lower and much more manageable. And again, you can see why those searches become numbered. So what we're doing is searching number 6, which is for this one is our social work concept, and we're searching 21, which is our older adult concept, and then we're searching search 35, which is our integrated team concept. So we end up with a search strategy that looks a little bit like this. And in all likelihood, this won't be your final strategy for that database. You might find that you have too many results, or you need to keep narrowing it down, or you don't have enough, or you have to take some terms out, or it's not quite specific enough. But you keep playing around with different combinations until you and your team are happy that you've captured as much information as you can. And again, as I said earlier, if you're using more than one database, you repeat this process for each of your databases. And you can see in my spreadsheet along the bottom, I've got a different page for each of the databases, and I've included different terms for each of the databases. In all of them, we've used our Boolean operators, we've used our free text and quotes and our truncation to try and narrow it, be as encompassing as possible. And then we think about how we would build a search term on the open access or non-subscribed databases. And this is done a little bit differently. And the example I'm going to use here is Web of Science. So everything we've discussed so far is great if you've got access to through your institution to all these lovely academic databases. You may not have this, so I'll show you how to build a strategy on Web of Science. You can all access this for free. To get a Web of Science, to get to Web of Science, all you need to do is type Web of Science to Google, and it will be helpful to create an account. It does ask you to register using your school or work account, but you don't have to do this. A personal account is absolutely fine. So you'll open a page with a search bar like this. You'll have a drop-down menu which asks you where in the results you want to search for specific terms. Hovering over that will give you a definition of each of those areas. Because we're just starting out, I'll probably just go for all fields. But because we're looking to build a search strategy, I will go straight to the advanced search option. And it's actually much easier to build our concept search strings here. We'll start by checking the field tag to check is that it's set to where we want. So again, I'd probably go for all fields at this point. We enter our search term, remembering to use our quotation marks and truncation and our asterisks. We make sure we've got the correct Boolean operator selected. So we're building a concept, so we're going to start with OR. And then we just press add to query. You'll see that the query preview box in the middle, that our term has been added, and Web of Science is building a search string for us. We can keep adding terms this way and building our concept. And when we're ready, we just hit search. And you'll notice here that there isn't any of the subject terms or mesh headings or anything like that. And that's because Web of Science doesn't actually use those. It's just purely free text, which makes it a little bit easier. So with that search, we've got loads of results. And again, like I said before, this is fine. We're just building the search, like on the other database, and it doesn't matter too much if there's lots for just one concept, because we're just building and we're playing around and seeing what's happening. But we have here got our first concept search. So we can click search to get back to the screen we were just on. If anyone knows the better way of doing it, that's great. I couldn't work one out. So now you'll find that search saved in your history at the bottom of the advanced search screen. We'll repeat these steps for each of our concepts, slowly building our search, much the same as we did with the other database. And again, you'll notice this is only 3 text terms with our quotation and asterisks. Once we've got search strings for all of our concepts, we can now combine them into one big search. So we'll make sure this box is checked to make sure we've selected all of the search strings. And then you can press combine sets and select and, again, because you want your results to include something from each of those concepts. This will then give you another row, which is your final overall search. To look at the results, you can just click on the number of results here, which is 4,873. Still quite a lot. If you think this is too many, you can play around with the searches some more. You can change some of the terms and you can edit them directly in these boxes here with the little pen. And that will allow you to edit that search string right there. You can also change the field tags to only search for the abstract or the title or things like that if you want to narrow things down more. The same with the subscribed databases. I make sure I saved these terms in my trusty Excel spreadsheet. And again, this is just for my own organisation, and so I can make sure I've got all of my ducks in a row. And if you were just looking through Web of Sciences, you can save the searches in the form of an alert, which is just like that little notification bell there. And what that will do is send you an email if there's any new records that need to be added to that search. And you can also copy the link to that specific search, so you'll be able to find it again. And one of the questions I think that comes up a lot when people are looking at different types of reviews and how many results is how many results are too many. And for the review we're doing at the moment, we ended up with 9,852 initial results to screen. Because we searched on different databases though, and you can see the breakdown there of the different numbers of searches from different databases, we do end up with quite a lot of the same results. So we're using a fancy piece of software to manage our review, and thankfully it identifies most of the reviews for us, most of the duplicates for us. So this leaves us with 7,319 studies to review. But that's obviously us that are doing this as part of a team. If you're doing this on your own, you won't end up with nearly this many because it would be too much. So part of sort of narrowing down your searches is working out how much time you have to devote to reviewing studies and actually looking at the evidence you've got. So when we're searching for evidence, we talk about where we look at freely available academic databases, individual company websites, government websites, and subscribed databases. We talked about navigating databases, what we mean by mesh terms and subject headings, how to use Boolean operators, and how to use different forms of punctuation. We've talked about how to build a strategy, so in subscribed databases by mapping out key concepts, including the different spellings and so on, and then building a strategy in open databases, which is much the same but slightly easier. So hopefully by now you understand where to look for evidence and you have an idea of how you can build a search strategy, and you can go out and have a practice and have a mess around. And then next time we'll be talking about critically appraising studies, and that's on the 17th of April. And again, that's all of the session come to a close. If you'd like to give any feedback, you'd be able to scan the QR code on your screen. And if anyone has any questions, now's the time. If not, don't worry at all and I'll let you go. I'll look at the chat, see if anyone's got any questions.
Can I just ask about the slides? Are you sending them out to us? I was just thinking what you're saying about the links on.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't be able to see that.
So I can send them out to you. We're also putting them up on the Open Science Framework, and I need to talk to Sharon to work out how to sort of distribute that, but I can send them out to you after this.
And are they getting put up on the ARC website?
Yes,
No.
the recording is.
Okay.
So the recording will go up on the ARC website as well. But
I'm gonna put your email in the chat.
yeah, so if anyone wants to drop me an email, Amy's just putting that in the chat at all. And if anyone, if particularly at the council, if like there's anyone that would like to develop a search strategy and would like a bit of help working out how to do that, always drop me an email and I'm happy to help out at any time. But thank you for coming. I'll stop this recording now.
If people have questions online, just feel free to shout out. I'm trying to look for any raised hands, but I can't see any at the moment.